The morning began like any other, with people waking up for work, children going to school, and the world moving in its usual rhythm. But then the skies over Earth changed. Without warning, the clouds split apart, and something far larger than the moon slid into view, its metallic surface reflecting sunlight in sharp, cold flashes. All across the planet, satellites caught sight of dozens of strange ships arriving at once, moving in perfect formation. The world's governments scrambled to identify them, but within minutes, every television, phone, radio, and billboard went black. Then a voice spoke in every human language at once, deep and emotionless, saying, "People of Earth, you will surrender your planet to the Galactic Council. Resistance will result in erasure." The words were clear, slow, and heavy, as if meant for children to understand, yet they carried the weight of an execution order. On the streets, people froze. In homes, coffee cups slipped from hands. No one could tell if this was a threat, a joke, or the start of something no one had prepared for. But in a secure bunker under the mountains, a small group of humans had been expecting this for years. In that bunker, screens lit up with alien warship readings, each one tagged with distance, speed, and possible weapons. A tall man in a black uniform leaned over the main console, his voice low but steady. "They finally came," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. Around him, soldiers and analysts moved quickly, typing commands, repositioning satellites, and unlocking encrypted systems that had never been used before. This was not the first contact humanity had dreamed of. This was the invasion scenario every major power had secretly feared, and here it was, right on schedule. The alien ships began releasing smaller craft, needle-like drones that descended into the atmosphere without sound. They hovered over cities, scanning streets and buildings with beams of pale blue light. People filmed them from their windows, not yet realizing those drones were mapping every inch of the planet for precision strikes up above. In the command ship of the Galactic Council fleet, the alien leaders watched the scans pour in. They spoke in a language of clicks and hums, their voices filled with arrogance. To them, Earth was a small, primitive world with too much water, too much weather, and life forms barely intelligent enough to build rockets. One alien, taller and covered in silver scales, hissed, 3 hours. That is all they have. After that, we begin removal." The Council believed their power was absolute. They had crushed worlds far more advanced than Earth. They saw humans as another obstacle to be swept aside, like dust before a storm. But far below, in Earth's hidden places, quiet preparations were unfolding, preparations the Council could not see, because they had been built to be invisibly. A windowless room deep inside the bunker, a woman with short hair and sharp eyes studied the alien fleet's movements. She tapped a screen, and orbital defense platforms disguised for decades as civilian satellites came online. "We're locked on," she said calmly. The tall man beside her, the one they called Wraith, didn't smile. "Not yet," he replied. "Let them think we're weak. Let them get comfortable." The plan was risky. Humanity's best chance wasn't to attack immediately, but to lure the aliens into underestimating them even more. That meant allowing the enemy to believe Earth was frozen in fear. Out in the open world, that wasn't hard. News stations ran constant footage of the alien ships, their shadows stretching over entire cities. Governments issued statements telling people to stay indoors. Panic began to take root. 3 hours felt like 3 days. The alien voice returned, repeating its demand for surrender. This time it gave a countdown, each minute like a drumbeat before an execution. In the streets, some cried. Others shouted into the sky in defiance. In the bunker, the countdown was met with silence, except for the steady tapping of keys and the low hum of machines charging. Wraith stood at the center of it, all watching the timer tick down, his mind already moving to the moment after zero. He knew the Council had no idea what was waiting for them. They saw a blue planet, rich in resources, inhabited by soft, fragile creatures. They didn't see the hidden weapons in orbit, didn't know about the fleets hidden in the asteroid belt. They couldn't imagine that humans had been listening to deep space signals for decades. waiting for the day the enemy finally showed their face at the last minute before the deadline. Wraith leaned forward and pressed a small button on the console. Somewhere high above, an invisible craft detached from the shadow of a weather satellite and began to drift toward the alien flagship. Its hull was coated with a material that bent light, making it vanish to alien sensors. Inside sat a single pilot, silent and still, watching the massive alien ship grow larger in the viewport. His mission was not to attack it, was to deliver something. As he closed in, he released a small metallic capsule that latched onto the alien hull with a faint, magnetic click. The capsule began transmitting one single repeating message directly into the Council's secure network. Coordinates. Not Earth's coordinates. Homeworld coordinates. Taken from intercepted Council transmissions years ago, when the alien crew found the capsule and read the data. Confusion spread through the bridge. Then came fear. Someone, somewhere, had been listening to them for a long time. Someone knew their secrets. Back in the bunker, Wraith watched the alien ship hesitate just for a second. Now they know we're not prey, he murmured. The countdown reached 0, and the skies held their breath. Oh. For the first time since they arrived, the Council's voice did not speak. That silence was the real message, and it spread through Earth like a current. The war had not started yet, but everyone could feel it. The opening move had been made, and it belonged to humanity. The Galactic Council's countdown had ended, but their pride would not allow them to back away. From orbit, they launched their first precision strike toward one of Earth's largest military bases. To their shock, the moment the energy beams neared the atmosphere, they bent, twisted, and vanished into harmless bursts of light. The alien crews thought it was a malfunction until they tried again, and again the shots dissolved into nothing. On the surface, the base stood untouched, its radar towers still scanning the skies. High above, hidden among debris and old satellites, Earth's orbital jamming arrays hummed quietly. These devices had been placed decades ago under the cover of international space research programs. They were designed for only one purpose: to make an enemy's weapons lose their aim. As if the laws of physics had been rewritten. In the Galactic Council's war records, nothing like this existed. Unsure whether to call it sabotage, interference, or magic deep in the bunker, Wraith stood with his arms folded, watching the alien fleet's confusion on the monitors. They're scanning hard, the woman with sharp eyes said, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. They still don't know how we're doing it. Wraith nodded slowly. Good. Let's keep it that way. His voice was calm, but his mind was already on the next move. The plan had been laid years before. When the day came, Earth would not strike with full power at once. It would bleed the enemy's confidence, piece by piece, until fear started working against them. Now it was time for the second move, and it was his personal task to carry it out far above, cloaked from sight. The same invisible craft from before began its approach toward the alien flagship once more. This time, it flew dangerously close, weaving through the enemy fleet with impossible precision. The pilot inside was a ghost call sign Wraith. He could feel the hum of the alien scanners passing over his ship, searching for anything unusual. But their sensors saw nothing, and Wraith drifted into position like a shadow between the stars. Instead of a weapon, he carried something smaller, a palm-sized device that looked harmless. But once placed inside the alien command ship, it would become the loudest message Earth had ever sent under cover of a passing debris cluster. Wraith released a small probe. It latched onto an airlock seam of the flagship with barely a sound. The device didn't explode, began broadcasting a steady, low-frequency pulse straight into the Council's secured communications network. The pulse contained Earth's most classified space coordinates, deep hidden bases, weapons platforms, and research stations scattered across the solar system. But here was the twist. Half of those coordinates were fakes. Every one of them was rigged with surprises for whoever tried to investigate. In the alien mind, it looked like humans were daring them to attack everywhere at once inside the ebb. Council flagship, alarms blared. Alien officers crowded around the data feed, their voices sharp and tense. "They know our frequency protocols," one of them hissed. "Ow!" Another snarled, "Destroy the probe." But the fear had already taken root. If humans could insert devices into their ships undetected, what else could they do? For the first time since arriving, the alien commanders began to imagine defeat not from overwhelming weapons, but from an enemy who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time back on Earth. The world's people didn't know the details, but they saw the alien fleet hesitate. The warships that had been descending toward the planet slowed and began drifting in wider circles. News cameras captured the moment, and the footage spread in seconds. Ordinary people started to feel a shift, a strange kind of hope. If the aliens were as all-powerful as they claimed, why weren't they attacking now? In the bunker, Wraith returned from his mission, stepping out of the decloaking craft without a word. The woman at the console turned to him. "They found the probe," she asked. Wraith allowed the faintest hint of a smile. "They did. And now they can't stop thinking about it that night." Earth's defense grid stayed quiet, but in orbit, the Council's ships began moving in strange, cautious patterns. The commanders were no longer speaking in the tone of conquerors. They were speaking like hunters who just realized the prey might have teeth sharp enough to bite back. And somewhere in the dark void between stars, the humans who had been preparing for this moment knew that hesitation was the beginning of fear. And fear was the first crack in the Council's power. The war was far from over, but already the balance was shifting. The Galactic Council was not used to hesitation. In their long history of conquest, they had never paused once they began. Yet now, their fleet circled Earth with an unfamiliar caution. It was not because of the human size or numbers; those were laughable compared to the empires they had crushed before it. It was because every step they took seemed to vanish into a trap they couldn't see. To them, humans were supposed to be predictable prey, but the Council's latest plan, meant to regain control, would prove that Earth was anything but predictable. The order was simple: capture human leaders alive, break their spirit, and make the rest surrender without further bloodshed. They sent their elite units, creatures bred and trained for stealth in toxic swamps, frozen moons, and burning deserts. These soldiers had ended rebellions before they even began. But on Earth, they would meet something even more dangerous: humans, who had trained in places even the aliens could not survive. The first capture team arrived over Antarctica, dropping through a storm that could tear metal apart. Their landing craft slipped through the blizzard, guided by heat signatures of an isolated human research outpost. The aliens expected frightened scientists, maybe a few soldiers, nothing more. They entered the building in silence and never came out. Hours later, the Council received only a fragment of video from a helmet camera. It showed shadows moving through the snow, shapes that were human but blurred, as if the storm itself was protecting them. The last image was a gloved human hand pulling the camera away. Then the feed went dead. The Council's analysts tried to explain it as weather interference, but the soldiers in the fleet exchanged uneasy looks. No one in their ranks had ever seen an entire elite squad vanish without a single shot being fired. Didn't end there. A second team was sent to infiltrate a jungle military post in South America. They entered under cover of night, using technology that masked their heat and sound. But the jungle betrayed them not to the humans, but for the humans. The aliens found themselves hunted by unseen shapes, their movements mirrored and predicted. By dawn, only one alien made it back to the extraction point. His armor was covered in deep claw marks, not from any Earth animal, but from human knives. The survivor spoke only one sentence before collapsing. "They were waiting for us from the Council's point of view. These were statistical anomalies. Bad luck." But in the bunker under the mountains, Wraith knew exactly what was happening. Earth's shadow operatives had been activated. These were soldiers who trained in environments no alien species could endure. Deep-sea darkness, where pressure could crush ships. Deserts, so hot metal warped in the sun. Mountaintops with air so thin most life would suffocate in minutes. They had learned to move without sound, strike without warning, and vanish without trace. Against them, the Council's best soldiers were simply outmatched. The Council tried to adapt. They changed drop zones, altered approach patterns, and deployed advanced tracking drones. None of it mattered. Every attempt to seize a human leader ended the same way: silence, then nothing. The only evidence the Council ever recovered was a package that drifted toward their flagship one morning. Inside were alien weapons cleaned, polished, and tagged with the names of the operatives who had taken them. It was not a trophy. It was a warning. By now, the Council's commanders had stopped speaking with confidence. In their private chambers, voices rose in frustration. "We have the technology to burn this world to ash," one shouted. "Then, why haven't we?" Another replied coldly. That was the problem. Something about Earth's resistance made them hesitate to unleash full destruction. It was not mercy, it was the gnawing fear that perhaps they did not know enough about this enemy to survive a direct fight. Meanwhile, on the surface, most humans had no idea about the shadow war being fought in the jungles, mountains, and frozen wastes. They only knew that the alien ships stayed in orbit, watching but not striking. In the bunker, Wraith stood over a table covered with maps and reports from shadow operatives around the globe. Every mission had succeeded. Every target had vanished. But Wraith's eyes were not on the victories, they were on the next step. "They're losing patience," the woman with sharp eyes said. "Good," Wraith answered quietly. "Patience is the last thing keeping them from making a mistake." Far above the Earth, in the cold halls of the flagship, the Galactic Council decided to change their strategy again. If the humans wanted to hide their true strength, the Council would force it into the open. They would not strike small targets anymore. They would strike at the planet itself. The blockade would begin at dawn. At first light, the Galactic Council fleet shifted formation. From the ground, their movements looked like slow, deliberate dances across the morning sky. But inside the ships, it was a battle stance. The Council had decided on a full planetary blockade. No human ship would leave orbit. No transmissions would escape the solar system. From this moment forward, Earth was to be cut off from the galaxy entirely. To the Council, this was the perfect pressure tactic. Humans would grow desperate without trade, without allies, without escape. But in the bunker under the mountains, Wraith and his team had been waiting for this exact move. A blockade meant the enemy would gather their forces in predictable locations. Predictable locations meant easy targets beyond Neptune's orbit. In the cold and silent dark, something vast began to wake. It had been hidden for decades, disguised as a chain of harmless mining stations. In reality, this was Project Black Horizon, humanity's most secret and most dangerous weapon. Massive railgun platforms, each the size of a city block, began to rotate toward the incoming alien formation. Their barrels were so large a human could walk upright inside them. Each one was capable of firing projectiles at a fraction of the speed of light. No energy beams, no flashy explosions, just pure, unstoppable force. The railguns began to charge, their power cores glowing faintly in the blackness. The Galactic Council didn't notice at first. Their ships were focused on Earth's atmosphere, scanning for weapons launches or missile activity. But then, without warning, the first shot fired. There was no light, no sound, just an alien cruiser suddenly splitting in half, its hull tearing open as if sliced by an invisible blade. The two halves drifted apart, silently, atmosphere venting into space. On the Council's bridge, alarms screamed as officers scrambled to find the source of the attack. They saw nothing. The second shot came seconds later, and another ship was simply gone, its remains scattering into the void like dust in the wind in the bunker. Wraith watched the destruction unfold with steady eyes. The woman with sharp eyes gave a slow nod. First volley complete. They're scrambling. Wraith didn't celebrate. "Send the message," he said. Across every communication channel the Council could access, a simple transmission appeared. This is your only warning.
Oh.
No threats, no boasting, just a cold fact. And somehow, that made it worse. It meant the humans were confident. Enough to give their enemy a choice up in orbit. The council was shaken, but not yet broken. Their commanders roared for retaliatory strikes, but the fleet's sensors still couldn't locate the attackers. Every second they hesitated, more railgun. Barrels aligned in the dark. A few alien officers whispered the word they had avoided since arriving: retreat. But the council's pride was heavier than their fear. They chose to hold position, convinced they could still force Earth to kneel on Earth's surface. People could see the alien ships above, but they had no idea what was happening beyond the edge of the solar system. News networks reported strange debris falling into Jupiter's atmosphere, never knowing those fragments were the remains of warships. In the bunker, Wraith leaned over the operations table, his voice quiet but certain. "They think they've seen our teeth," he said. "They haven't even seen the jaw yet." That night, the alien fleet tightened its blockade. The Council still refused to retreat, but now every ship kept its weapons armed and its shields. At full power, in their minds, they were preparing for a counterstrike. What they didn't know was that the counterstrike had already begun. And the next weapon humanity was about to unleash wasn't hidden in deep space, was hidden inside their own planet. The Council's armada moved into low orbit with the precision of a blade being drawn from its sheath. Thousands of alien warships hovered above Earth, their hulls glowing with the heat of charged weapons. They intended to end the standoff in one decisive blow, but as they prepared to fire, their sensors began picking up strange anomalies in the atmosphere below. Massive shifts in air pressure, rapid temperature spikes, and lightning storms forming out of clear skies. To alien science, whether it was a background detail, an inconvenience, not a weapon, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Far below, deep in hidden control centers buried under mountains, oceans, and deserts, humans activated Project Tempest. It was an experimental network designed decades ago to manipulate the planet's own natural systems, originally intended for climate control in case of global disaster. But in wartime, it became something far more dangerous, by targeting specific pressure zones. The system could create storms powerful enough to tear apart steel, lightning bolts hot enough to melt hull plating, and wind speeds that could fling dropships across the horizon. Now, for the first time, it was unleashed against an enemy. The first alien landing craft descended over the Pacific, shields shimmering in the sunlight. A moment later, the sea erupted beneath them. Towering waves, taller than skyscrapers, rose like walls, smashing the ships before they could fire. Sensors screamed as dozens of craft vanished under the raging water. In the skies over Asia, fleets tried to descend through massive cloud banks, only to be met with lightning strikes so precise they pierced weak points in their armor. In South America, gale force winds hurled troop carriers off course, slamming them into mountainsides. Across the globe, nature itself had turned hostile. From the bridge of the flagship, the Council's commanders stared in disbelief. "The planet is attacking us." "Attacking us," one of them muttered. Their scientists scrambled to explain the readings, but the truth was too simple for them to accept. The humans had turned their own world into a weapon. In the bunker, Wraith stood with his arms behind his back, listening to the live reports from Earth's weather control hubs. "Keep it balanced," he ordered. "We want them broken, not desperate enough to destroy the planet outright." His voice carried no pride, only focus. To him, this wasn't a victory, yet it was just another step in breaking the enemy's will. The alien fleet tried to adapt, raising shields and deploying energy dampeners, but storms don't obey rules of battle. Lightning slipped through shield. Harmonics, sudden hurricanes twisted ships into one another, turning the Council's perfect formations into chaotic swarms. Rain pounded down hard enough to flood engines. Even orbital bombardment failed, as sudden cloud formations deflected targeting systems. It wasn't just that humans were fighting it was that the planet itself seemed to be on their side. In a desperate gamble, the Council pulled its forces higher into orbit, out of the worst of the weather's reach. But even there, they could see the wreckage of their own fleet littering the skies. The commanders realized something they had never faced before. This was not a world to be conquered. It was a fortress, one built over millions of years now, commanded by people who knew exactly how to use it. As the last storms began to fade, Earth's skies cleared just enough to reveal the damage. Alien ships burned as they fell into the ocean, their flames reflecting off the waves. Across the world, humans watched in, and not just at the destruction, but at the fact that it had been done without a single missile being launched. In the bunker, the woman with sharp eyes looked at Wraith and asked, "Do you think they'll leave?" Wraith stared at the tactical map, where the alien fleet was now pulling back into high orbit. "No," he said quietly, "not yet. They still think they can win, but soon they'll understand why every predator fears the prey it can't predict." High above, the council gathered what remained of its pride. The weather had humbled them, the railguns had wounded them, the shadows on the surface had humiliated them. Now they had one choice left, to either retreat or risk total destruction. And in that moment of indecision, Earth prepared to deliver its final answer. The alien fleet hung in high orbit, their once perfect formation broken into scattered clusters. Some ships drifted with visible scars from railgun strikes, others bore deep burns from lightning storms. On the Council's flagship, silence weighed. Heavy over the command deck, no one dared speak of retreat, but the thought was there, unspoken in every commander's mind. They had come to this blue planet expecting quick victory, expecting the fear of conquest to break its people. Instead, the fear was theirs. Every strategy had been met with something they had never seen before: shadows that swallowed their soldiers, weapons that struck from beyond sight, and now a planet itself turned into an executioner. The Council's leader, a towering figure, with skin like polished stone, stood at the viewport, staring down at Earth. In his mind, the choice was simple: either burn this world completely or leave and pretend the attempt never happened. But he knew the truth: burning Earth might fail, and failure here would echo across the galaxy. Still, pride urged him to speak. "One last strike," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "We will not leave empty-handed." Around him, his officers avoided each other's eyes. They all understood what one last strike meant: risking everything. They had left. In the bunker, Wraith and his team monitored the fleet's movements. The woman with sharp eyes glanced at the readings. "They're charging weapons across the board," she said. Wraith's expression didn't change. "Then we show them what happens when they commit fully," at his signal deep within Earth's crust, hidden under oceans, deserts, and ice caps. The final phase of the defense came online. Giant pulse generators buried decades ago under the guise of seismic research began to power up. Their purpose was simple: to create an electromagnetic pulse so massive it could cripple every unshielded system in low orbit. The aliens didn't see it coming. As they began their attack sequence, the generators fired in unison. Explosion. No flash. Just a sudden, terrible silence in the alien fleet. Lights went out. Shields collapsed. Entire ships drifted powerless, trapped by gravity's slow pull, toward the planet they had failed to conquer. Some tried to restart their systems, but the damage was too deep. The Council's flagship shuddered as control consoles went dark. In the chaos, a single transmission cut through every channel audio, only calm and clear. "This is Earth. Come and try again." It wasn't shouted, it wasn't angry, it was a promise. Across the galaxy, every listening station, every pirate relay, every intelligence outpost heard those words. And they understood the meaning. Earth was not a world you threatened. It was a world you survived only by leaving it alone. In orbit, what was left of the fleet began to scatter, limping away on backup drives, some ships being towed by others. The blockade collapsed without a fight. On the surface, life slowly returned to something like normal. People went back to their streets, their markets, their schools. But the memory of alien shadows in the sky would never fade. In the bunker, the operation screens went dark one by one as systems powered down. The woman with sharp eyes finally exhaled. "We won," she said. Wraith shook his head slightly. "No, we warned them." Winning comes if they never come back. Far away, in the deep chambers of the Galactic Council, the survivors spoke in hushed tones. They filed their reports, but many left out the details that shamed them most. Yet all agreed on one thing: no fleet would ever be sent to Earth again. Not because they could not defeat the humans, but because in trying, they had seen what humans became when cornered. And somewhere, beyond the Council's reach, hidden in the shadows of their own planet, the humans waited, prepared, ready for the day someone else would be foolish enough to test them.